What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Existential Stoic Podcast, episode 31 3. How to the wisdom of experience, what I would tell my younger self, and what my older self wants to tell me. Dash 3, because this is the third time we're trying to do this. We had some issues with it freezing and everything. But I'm Randy with my buddy Danny. Hey,
Hey,
Danny.
Randy.
All right. So today we are talking about experience of the ages. I mean, as we get older, we make mistakes. Hopefully, we learn from some of them. We get some experience under our belt, and then it's like, man, I wish that I knew this when I was younger, and all that fun stuff.
It's funny. Like I think probably everyone's probably had that thought, right? Like if I could go back to like this point in time, knowing what I know now, like I would kick ass, right? Because you have all this wisdom and all this knowledge, and it's not just like, I think it's funny, but people, it's not just like knowledge; it's the actual experience of living. So you know yourself better, and I think that's the big part of it, right? If you could tell yourself something, impart some wisdom from now to an earlier version of yourself, you could really help yourself, right? Because you know so much more about who you are now. You could get yourself there faster, presumably. There's things you could change. And it's really interesting. And it's like, it's also that double-edged sword though, of like, if you really could go back in time, you'd change everything. So it's like, what do, right? You are where you are.
Yeah, yeah, it's difficult because a lot of the times that we're doing things in life, it's the first time that we're doing it, and that's like a very steep learning curve the first time you're doing anything. And then when you have to do it again and again and again, it gets easier. Like I remember when I was learning to do surgery, the first time it was very, very difficult, even to just tie knots with the instruments. And then I'd get to a point where I was doing it and not even thinking about it. And then I'm sure everybody has experiences of stuff like that in their life. um, but we're not talking about that today. We're talking about advice that we would give our
Yeah,
younger selves.
we're definitely not talking about it. Although it's a valid point and it's a good thing to think about. We all have
Yeah.
those things. Yeah. So yeah, what advice we would tell ourselves? How would you approach, what's the most important thing you would tell your younger self to kind of help them along the way?
It's funny because I was thinking about this stuff earlier today, and I was like, oh yeah, I would definitely tell myself that. And then I'm like, oh wait, I don't even follow that today. So
Yeah.
like one of the things that I was thinking to tell myself is like, don't worry, because I worry so much about so much stuff.
Oh
And
God.
I would be like, don't worry, it's going to work out. Like all the time, I'm always like worrying about the future. Like, will I survive? Will I make it? Will I be able to do this? Am I going to run out of money? All this stuff. And it's like, don't worry about it. It takes care of itself, you know?
Yeah, isn't that's the funny thing, man? It's like, it's like every time I stressed or like anxious and stuff, it's always about the future and it's always about the stuff that I know will take care of itself as long as I do my part now, right? I really don't have to worry about that stuff. But yet it's like the thing that we universally, I think, all panic about all the time and worry about, like, is this gonna work out? Is it gonna be good? Am I gonna fail? Am I gonna blah blah blah? And it's like, well, yeah, if you just keep worrying and don't do anything, if you do things, you'll be fine. And it's really a funny kind of conundrum that we put ourselves in, I think, where we stress ourselves out for no reason.
Yeah. And it's just, I found recently that it just kind of comes down to doing all that you can do that day, not trying to do more than you can possibly do, but just doing all that you can do that day. And then just take the next action and just have faith. Like that's literally all it is. Just take the next step and just have faith. And you do that, and it's just like, okay,
Yeah.
you get there.
Well, I think that's the tough part, right? Is having the faith, right? The faith that it'll work out, the faith that, even if we hit another roadblock or another obstacle, we'll still get through it. That faith that, like, even though we might have proven to ourselves that we can do these things over time, the faith that we'll be able to do it again the next time. It's almost like we almost forget or we worry that we won't be able to overcome the obstacles, even if they're similar in the future, even though we have already in our lives, right?
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
something in my journal that I read almost every day that's remind yourself regularly that you're better than you think you are.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I
Because
think that's, something
yeah,
we forget constantly.
oh, dude, we underestimate ourselves and we overestimate everyone else.
Well, I think too, part of it too is, we're also like our own worst critics. And I mean, that's true, especially if you're doing like any kind of work, especially that's creative, but just in general, I think we also just are our own worst critics. We are overly harsh on ourselves, and it just really gets in the way of our progress and also our happiness.
Mhm.
On a side note, I was just thinking about this because you mentioned like, you thought of some things that you wanted to tell your younger self, but then you were like, oh wait, I don't do that now anyway. But I was thinking, like, how many of the things do you want to tell your younger self, though, because it would change now? Do you follow what I mean? Like, because, like, if I followed it then, presumably I would follow it now and I wouldn't deal with that bullshit. So it's that part of it.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that's a perfect one. Like one of the biggest ones that I would tell myself younger is do what you enjoy doing.
Oh,
Like
God, yeah.
there was a big portion of my formative years, and I would say everything up until about 3 years ago, when I was doing things because there was an obligation. Like I felt like I had to do them. I remember you gave me like this brain exercise one time a while ago. You're like, if you didn't have the obligation, would you still do it? And whenever I have like a challenging situation, I always ask myself that, and I'm like, no, that's crazy. But for
Super
so long
counterfactual, right?
there were so many things I was doing because I felt like it was an obligation. And even like, it's ironic because growing up as a kid, like I played Dungeons and Dragons. I made these little Warhammer fantasy models. I painted them. I read fantasy books like Lord of the Rings, and probably would have read Game of Thrones and everything if it was out when I was a kid. And like all that stuff, I got so shit on upon by society and everything for doing that. And now that's popular culture. And it's
Yeah.
like, I spend so much of my life trying to repress that and trying to be a tough guy, lifting weights,
Yeah.
fixing cars, all this stuff. And it's just, what was the point?
Well, that's the fun. I think that's something important though, is like if you do what you enjoy and you stick with it, and you don't worry about trends. Because it's funny. I see this all the time with like kids going to school even now, right? Trying to plan their degree, and it's like if you look at trends, you might pick something that may pay off, but it's still a gamble because whenever there's a trend, you're flooding the market anyway in the current time. And if you follow trends, you're never following yourself. So you're always going to be doing something contrary to what you want to do, to what's right for you. And ultimately, that's not going to really make for a good life long term. But it's one of the hardest lessons I think for all of us to learn, right? Because we have that fear of security, safety, and all of that, the concerns with money and everything, that it makes it very difficult to follow what we want to follow. And then like, in your situation too, like the social and peer pressure and everything, and the feeling like you have to present yourself a certain way, it sucks. It really does. I
Hmm.
mean, I think that's one of the biggest ones is don't worry about what other people think, right? Because that doesn't get you anywhere. They're not living your life.
Yeah, but how does someone do that?
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I
Hmm.
think it's funny, we often I think miss, well, I don't know, confidence I think a lot of times is being sure of yourself. But I think there's also another side to not worrying about what other people think, that's also like loving yourself and knowing who you are, right? That you know that your knowledge of who you are and what you're doing is correct because of your happiness or your enjoyment or because of your passion for it or whatever, however you want to phrase it. And so it doesn't matter what the world thinks you should be doing, because that would ultimately be wrong, right? Like those counterfactuals do work really well, like to kind of tell yourself, is this right for me? Is this the path I should be taking? But I think that's the thing we all struggle with, right? Because most of us don't know. you know?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing recently that I got about not worrying about what other people think, it's like, everybody's trying to cherry pick these different things of people's lives. They're like, I want his body or her body and their money and this person's family life. And it's like they want to cherry pick the the highlights of their life. And I heard it said that like you shouldn't want one part of someone's life unless you want the whole thing. And once I saw that, I saw that like, you know what, it really doesn't matter too much what other people think, because even though they may have this one thing, like I look at somebody who's very, very successful in the business that I have, and while I get green with envy about how much money they're making,
Yeah.
I don't want how they look physically. I don't want their personality. I
Right.
don't want, their family life and where they are living and all of that stuff. So it's like every time I get sick with envy, I just remind myself of all this other stuff that I do not want. Like I would not trade that at all to have what they're doing financially.
See, I think that's a great way to look at it too, right? Is you're looking at the whole person rather than just like, like you said, cherry picking ideas. Because I think we do that all the time, though. We over sort of or hyper focus on one thing about their life or about the personality, about the person, and you miss everything else. And it's like, well, they only got that because of what they're doing, right? They only got that because of their whole life. And a lot of times, like that kind of either money requires a certain character that you might not want, or it might require like, totally ignoring like family and stuff and working all the time and like those kinds of things that like I think most people, if you really look at the whole life, it's asking yourself really deep down, like, what do I want, right? What do I want my life to look like? Do I want to live there? It's like, I think it's funny, like you see like a lot of times like with like what is like acting and stuff. What are the two big places people go to? New York and like LA, right? Because that's where most of the jobs are. And it makes sense if that's what you want to do. But it's like, if you hate the city, well, you have a problem, a fundamental issue then with living there. So it's like, I think it's like we have to understand that, it takes every life is a whole life. It can't be one component. That's a good one. I like that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I would tell my younger self too. I think something I still struggle with too is, like to be easier on myself. I think that, things take time, they come in time, and learning to, because it's something I wish I was better at now, like learning to sort of put the brake on my expectations a little bit and tone them down so that they're more in line with like, because, it's like, I want things, it's almost like, it's kind of similar to what you just said, I guess. Like, and I want things to progress really fast in certain areas, but I also want all this other stuff. And it's like, in order for that to happen, it's not consistent with what I really want. What I really want is a well-rounded and like, whole life. And that requires effort in a lot of areas. So I have to also tone down my expectations for things and realize that it will take more time, right? And that it's okay that it takes more time. I think that's one of
Yeah.
the big things we all struggle with when we're young, right? Is seeing other people progress in areas and wanting to be there too, and feeling like you're failing because you're not there yet. But really, it's just you have to progress at your own speed too, and live your life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's such a good one, and one that I struggle with on a regular basis, being patient and gentle with myself. And it's tough because there's so many examples of other people who are making it nowadays. We're
Yeah.
we're bombarded with imagery of all these people who have made it and all these successes and all these people who have done it, and why haven't you done it yet? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And like literally that's how stuff is marketed to us nowadays. It's like something's wrong with you, buy this, it'll solve that. Like literally that's marketing. And so
It'll
it's
fix
very
it.
difficult. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's very difficult to think that things aren't wrong with you, but uh just being able to be patient. Like I I read like the first chapter of Steve Martin's book, but Born Standing Up. And it's on my list of things to read, but I
Caveat.
I like I like what he said so well, is that somebody, because he's a great stand-up comedian, but he also is a really good banjo player. And they were asking him, how'd you become such a good banjo player? And he said, well, I figured if I give myself 40 years, I'll be really good at it. So I just kept practicing.
Yeah.
And I found that such a great perspective on pretty much anything that you want to do. Like another thing that I have written in my journal is that given a long enough time frame, I can learn anything. And it's just reminding myself that I have that long time frame to do it and not giving up too soon.
Well, I think, yeah, we forget that so often, right? Because everything, and you're right, everything's sold to us to do it now. Even like the language learning apps are a great example, right? It's always like learn German, learn this or whatever, whatever language, French or whatever, in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And it's like, you're not going to learn a language. You're not going to be an expert in language in 3 weeks. Maybe you'll learn some phrases. That's great. And, you could travel or whatever. But like, it's that expectation that you have to know the whole thing, right? And it's so flawed because the reality is like, yeah, you could, if anything you want to learn, you can become an expert. Giving yourself enough time, you can do it. It's not a big deal. Anyone can do it. You can become an expert in physics. You can be an expert in, whatever you want. Really, it doesn't matter. And it's just like, you just need to put the effort in. And when you look long term, I think it's helpful because it makes each incremental step easier because there's less pressure to have it all done right then and there, right? You realize that, okay, if I'm programming, I'm only going to learn the baby steps at the outset, right? I'm not going to jump from, learning the language at a basic level to then programming an entire thing, right? An app or something. It's not going to happen. It's going to take time and I need to do it slowly. And that's the best way to proceed, I think, with everything. Because we get, we sort of get better in the right way. We don't jump steps or we don't try and skip things that will later come back and make it more difficult. Yeah, I like that one. Good.
And it's also kind of going along with what you're saying. It's also noticing that while we can do anything, we can't do everything. And that can be really frustrating because like I know with like learning, I get down these loopholes. Like I start learning this and I'm like, oh, but I want to learn all this. And then that's like 5 more books that I have to read. And then I'm like, oh, but I want to learn all this. And it's like, it just, it's kind of amazing the amount of knowledge that is available.
Oh, it's insane. It's like it's staggering the amount of knowledge that's available, really, if you think about it. Like you can, and it's funny because you can get down those holes where you just start going from one topic to the next, and it's fun. It's really fun. But at the same time, it's like you have to also focus on something. And I think that's a good one too. I mean, just wisdom for my younger self is like, just pick something to focus on for 10 years, and just do it. And you will be good at it. It doesn't matter what it is. Just pick it and focus and do it. And if you don't worry about what other people think and you have the right mindset for your expectations, I think you'll do great with it. I think that's such a good one.
Mm-hmm. So here's another one that I have.
All right.
Listen to some people and don't listen to other people. But I don't know how to tell the difference between which ones to listen to and which ones not to listen to.
Isn't that the bitch of it though? Yeah, it's true, right? You can't listen to everybody.
Because like, okay, so like I look back and all when I was young, my grandmother was always telling me, get into computers, get into computers, get into computers. And I always had like a natural predilection to computers and technology. And yet the whole time I was pushing it off. And then I remember like when I was young, my grandfather was like, this Amazon thing is going to be something big. Look what they're trying to do. Put all books on a little device you can read with you. And like, wow, that would have been an amazing thing to invest in back then. Yeah. And so like, there are these things is like, wow, I really wish I would have listened to them. But then there are these other things that I really wish I wouldn't have listened to. Or no, maybe I would have. Yeah, like the forcing, not the forcing, but the encouraging me to pursue something veterinary medicine that wasn't really something that I wanted to do. It was just because that was like a profession and that's good to be a doctor.
It blah, blah, blah. Sounds good. Yeah.
Like I wish I wouldn't have listened to that. And then there was, like, or I wish I would have listened to myself. This is another one. Like learning to listen to yourself and really being able to quiet down enough to be able to listen to yourself. Like I remember in order to become a veterinarian, you have to log so many hours working at veterinary clinics. And like literally every job I had working at veterinary clinics, I quit because I hated it. And and it's like, red flag, learn to listen to yourself.
That's like a fucking alarm going off.
Dude, and then there was this one veterinarian who I worked with, and he's like, do not become a veterinarian. You will regret it. And I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to become a veterinarian.
Yeah. You have no idea, buddy. He's trying to help you out, give you good information. Well, it's funny. I think it's that tough situation of you have to listen to yourself and use that as a guide for which people to actually pay attention to. Right? The ones that are supportive of you, the ones that aren't pushing you into something or trying to guilt you into something, or the ones that are trying to be there for you to help you and to listen, that's who you want to listen to, right? And it's difficult though. It's very difficult to parse that out in the moment, I think. it's very hard sometimes to realize it because you have all this other stuff going on. I think you're right. Like being able to quiet down and listen to ourselves is one of the things I think most people struggle with. We don't know how to pay attention to our emotions, to our physical feelings and responses. We don't know how to pay attention to our mental sort of conscious ones. I mean, we struggle with this a lot. I think it would have been great for all of us if we had done this when we were younger, right? In preparation. I think one of the other things too, I just thought of this on a hindsight too. I think maybe it goes hand in hand with what you're saying is, you know, I think one of the other things I would tell my younger self is don't be fooled by titles. They don't matter at all. The person matters, not their title, not their stupid, whatever they put in front of their name or whatever fucking position they have. None of that shit matters. The person matters beneath it, not, because anybody can get a position. Anyone can be called whatever they want. And really like look for good people, not for authorities or not for, these grandstanding, titles.
Especially nowadays with all these experts or gurus, like literally anyone can be an expert, anyone can be a guru. It's and even like degrees, like getting a college education or whatever. Like you remember how much that was beaten into us? It was like
Oh God.
everyone was competing for what school they were going to go into. And nowadays it's like, you know what you get with a college degree? A job at Starbucks and $150,000 of debt. It's like,
Well,
why would you even bother?
the worst part is they still do it though to kids. They still beat in like, and it's like, it's such a funny thing too, because I really loved undergrad. I did. I had a great time and I felt like I learned a lot. I got a lot out of it. And it's like a certain part of me wouldn't trade that experience. But there's another part of me that's like, if it hadn't been, if we didn't push this value of school on kids so much, I might have done it differently. And I think that's the important thing, right? Not because that expectation to get it done right now in 4 years, to then right away go to the next 4 years. It's like to accrue all this debt when you could have slowed down and done it over 8, and probably not been in debt at all. You could have probably paid for it and realized that it doesn't actually matter really what school you go to and stuff. None of that shit really makes that much of a difference. It's more what you get out of it, right? Yeah.
Dude, if I could do it over again, here's what I would do. Okay. This is literally the advice that I would give my younger self. I would say, first off, don't go to college. Join the Air Force and do your 4 years at Air Force. And then when you're done at Air Force, get a job at McDonald's. McDonald's has like the best business systems in place out of any business on the planet. Get a job at McDonald's and just learn as much as you can there. Then teach yourself how to program, which you can do for free online. And then once you have the discipline that you've gotten from the Air Force, you have learn the best business systems from McDonald's, you've taught yourself computer programming. Now you can go and do whatever you want to do because you can have an independent, a location independent job that pays really well, no debt, and probably the best skill set of anyone on earth. That's what I would tell myself.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like, yeah, when you look back, it's funny how you can like imagine like such a different way of doing it, right? That would work so much better. And it's like, and that is the funny thing, I think that's, when you look back, it's like that's one of the other challenges of life, right? Is that we find ourselves where we are with what we have. And like it's so easy to look back and be like, oh, I would have done X, Y, and Z. But you have to deal with now, right? And I think that's something else too. It's funny, like, I don't know, thinking about this, it's funny. Like I think one of the other things I would have tell myself too is like, along the lines of like, don't worry that like, things always change. You can't expect things to be the same. And that expectation will, I think, cause you problems because it does, right? If you expect people to be the same, if you expect the country, the market to be the same, if you expect all this stuff, that will, come back and bite you. That you need to be prepared for change and for changes throughout life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And going hand in hand with that one, expecting change, is read.
Oh God, yeah.
Like I am so grateful every day that I love to read. And this actually took a while because in school they made us read absolute garbage, like The Scarlet Letter. And it literally turns kids off of reading because you have to read garbage that has no impact on your life. It's like Canterbury Tales. It's like and a lot of Shakespeare. It's like very difficult just to understand it. Whereas instead, ask kids, what's your dream? What do you want to do? Read a book on that. And it's like all of a sudden, kids will be like, ooh, I enjoy reading. Look at all the stuff that I learned and I can apply that. And so, I hear this thing all the time that if you read 5 books in any subject, you'll be one of the top most experts in the world in that subject. That's all you need to do. Read 5 books on it. And it's yeah.
I was gonna say it's funny now, right? Because all these books that come out by these experts are like so focused and so well done now that really is almost all it takes. And it's like I absolutely love reading too. I'm so thankful for that because like you give me a book, I can knock it out in like 4 days and understand it. I think that's the other thing. A lot of people don't realize the value of reading well and reading carefully and being able to do a close reading and really analyze stuff. But like, yeah, reading is probably one of the most important things. It's one of the easiest ways to gain information, gain experience, gain an understanding of things, of how things work. And yet so many people don't do it. It's amazing. I mean, like, I think that's one thing like I am thankful for is I've always read a lot. I think I would have told myself to read more actually at times than to read, anything else. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the average American reads 1 book a year, and two of the most successful people on the planet, Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, both of them were asked if you could have any superpower, what would it be? And both of them said the ability to read faster.
Yeah. That's funny, I always used to imagine that, like when I was younger, as if you could go to a library and just touch books and know the whole thing, like have read it. That would be awesome.
Dude, I've had that
So
fantasy too. I've
Yeah.
had that fantasy too. It's so great. I mean, I remember reading stuff about Teddy Roosevelt, and they said that he could just read a book in a night, and wow.
Like speed read. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's crazy though too, because like reading, like it's like it not only is it's like it's fun because you have all the fantasy and stuff, but like I think people forget too, there's a lot of value even in those books, but also then you have the histories, you have the biographies, you have like the actual like applied. It's amazing how much information is out there. And it's very the nice thing about reading too is it's very inexpensive. It's not a college course, it's like you get a book used for like a couple bucks, right? Rather than, whatever, spending thousands of dollars on a course that probably doesn't teach you anything different anyway than what you read.
Well, I mean, here's another thing. You read, let's say you read like what we did this past year, 100 books in a year. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's say you buy every one of those books, each book $10. So you spend $1,000 to get well beyond a college level education in a year.
Yeah.
It's like, and that's if you buy them. You can get it all for free at a library, like you said.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too. And if you read a lot too, like I love reading fantasy and stuff, but like you find yourself just reading other stuff because it's just fun. Like you end up getting caught up in it. Like I was reading books on quantum physics just for fun because I think it's interesting. And it's like, it's just nice too, because I think it gives you that broader perspective. Because, I think that's one of the things I would also tell myself is, like I'm happy with that. I didn't get caught up in specialization. I think is problematic because you don't know how to solve problems when you specialize. You need a broader open mind, and that reading can be a great way to that because it gives you ideas about things, or it gives you ways to look at things through a different lens, right? That makes it you more capable to solve your problems, to deal with things and everything. It's nice. Yeah, it is. Reading's a good one. I think that's a good one. One of the other things I would tell myself too is one thing I would tell myself actually really honestly too is like to just have a short exercise program every day and stick to it. Just like something low impact, like because I've always loved like hiking, biking, and even like work like weightlifting and stuff is fun, but like just like take a walk every day. I wish looking back, if I had done that every day, that would have been amazing. That's something that would have been cool because I do that now, and like if I could have done that every day, I think I always wonder what because you always get ideas on walks, you get the perspective, you go outside, like that would have been a good one. I think something just so simple like that.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely has a big impact on your life, just getting the body moving in any way.
No, yeah. It prevents. I mean, I mean, if you think about it, like we've talked about this before, but right, when do we always feel our worst? It's when we're not moving, right? When we're depressed, when we're laying around, when you're watching TV, it's like if that's what kills you.
Mhm. So one other one that I think is really important is, uh, and this is one that I struggled with a lot when I was younger, is just loving yourself. Like I grew up feeling not good enough, and it took a long, and it was kind of like what I was mentioning earlier, where like everything that I did, I got ridiculed for doing it. And I was fat when I was younger and I got ridiculed for that. And I really took it personally. And so like actually learning to just love myself how I am, like that was something that took so much work to do, and just like trying it over and over again, like faking it till I made it. And even now it's just something where like on a regular basis I just like remind myself that I love myself however I am. And there's actually a really good book called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It.
That's a
Turns
good way
out,
to say it.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's by Kamal Ravikant, who turns out to be Naval Ravikant's brother, who's like one of the
Oh,
people that I really
huh.
like to model. And yeah, it's a really good book, and it's just, I mean, it's a short little book, but he really goes into how important it is and just a few practices you can do every day to help with it, because it really makes a difference. Like it gives you that self-confidence to just try it, because it's like, hey, win, lose or draw, I love myself. And not only that, but I really love that I'm putting myself out there and trying. So yeah.
That's a good no, that's such a good one though. I think that's probably the most important thing you could tell yourself, right? Because at the end of the day, it's the only thing that matters. And it's really sad the what people do to each other and the way we try to make each other feel bad because we feel bad, right? I think so much of that like ridicule and so much of that like that trying to get people to be unhappy with themselves is really about the person that's trying to do it. It's about their own unhappiness. And I think, so if you love yourself, you can get beyond all of that. And it is, I think it's crucial, but it's not easy either, right? I mean, it's like when we talked about when we did the episode on self-love, we were talking about, right? Like the things we say to ourselves, we would never say to a friend, right? The kind of criticisms we come up with and stuff are so harsh and so mean. And it's like when you really think about it, it's so unnecessary to beat yourself up like that. It's so you would never say that to another person in your life. So why would you say it to yourself? Why would you think it's okay or that it's an appropriate evaluation, right, of the situation?
Yeah. And I think it's really a cultural type of thing, where in the Western world we're a lot more afflicted by it. I remember the story of the Dalai Lama when he was talking in like LA or something like that, or San Francisco or something. He was talking about self-love, and somebody asked him, they're like, how do I love myself if I hate myself? And he had the translator translate it like five times. And it turned out that like he started crying because he couldn't even comprehend that somebody wouldn't love themselves. It was so like against nature for somebody not to love ourselves. But anyone from America is probably like, yeah, I hate myself all the time. Like what, you know, but it's definitely like a cultural thing that we have to
Well,
really combat.
I think it's that, it's our whole system that pseudo meritorious system that really looks at every individual as either you succeed in these areas or you're an utter failure, right? And you should hate yourself because you failed. And that connection between success and failure and also your self-worth, because I think we connect our self-worth and our connection to ourselves with that whether or not we succeed in this system. And I think that's the problem, right? That there's nothing to we don't give ourselves, like people get really upset and depressed about like college debt and stuff, right? When they don't look at the larger picture, like you were forced into that decision when you couldn't even make those decisions, when you didn't even understand them. And everyone around you was telling you it was the right thing to do. This was the way to go. This was the way to a good life. This was the way not to be a failure. It's like, when you really look at it, it's like you're not to blame in that. And you didn't do anything wrong. And it's really, it's okay that you carry it. It's not a big deal. Like it just is what it is. That's not a reason not to love yourself, right?
Hmm.
That's a reason maybe to be upset with the system and stuff, and whatever. But that's what it is. It's nothing else.
Yeah, it's like that saying, just because you fail doesn't mean you're a failure. It's finding
Yeah.
the difference between results and who you are.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I
so
think that's why we have such a hard time separating too. Is like, and I think that's a good one too to tell yourself, right? Is like, I am not simply the value of my productivity. I am not simply what I produce. I'm a lot more than that. I'm a whole person. I
yeah,
think that would
I
be a good
mean,
one.
I believe that we're all like limitless potential. We can literally do anything, and just like they there are so many sayings, and it's always they
Oh
say,
yeah.
but it's like the master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried. It's only I don't get where we all of a sudden made it wrong to fail. Like, how did that
Yeah.
happen? And because how are you even supposed to try? Like, I feel so sorry for kids nowadays who are probably crippled by the education system, that they're too afraid to even try, because what happens if I try and I get it wrong? Oh gosh.
Well, that's why anxiety is so high now. I mean, for everyone, right? Because it's that fear of failure, it's that fear of like, and also it's like the realization that you can always pick yourself up and move forward from it. I think that's another thing I would tell myself too, is no matter what happens, you can move on from it. Nothing,
Mhm.
short of losing your life, you can move on from it, basically. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
what it is. And I think that's crucial to keep in mind, because like, we stress out so much about failure that we don't do anything. And it's really sad. And we're really like, we're paralyzing an entire generation because of that, I think. They don't
Mhm.
want to leave the house. It's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that's a good one. So, anything else that you would tell your younger self?
Um,
Mm.
yeah, I think, one of the other things I tell my younger self is, work on positivity, because that's crucial to enjoyment, I think. Don't expect to be positive all the time. Life is changed. There's good and bad days. But, work on that positive attitude overall, because I think that type of hopefulness helps you through a lot of these difficulties with failure and all that, to keep going, to knowing yourself that you are able to do that stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I like that one. And I would like to even continue that a little bit more, is build a routine around it.
Mm.
Like, I over the past year or so, I've really built up some routines that have helped me. Uh, and they're all based upon like putting good stuff in there. Like, don't worry so much about getting the bad stuff out, because you can just dump so much more good stuff in there, and that will take over all of it. So it's just like building a positivity routine, like you mentioned earlier, the exercising every day, the listening to positive material every day, focusing on the good things, being grateful, noticing the good things in the day, like doing the small delights that we talk about all
Yeah,
the time.
yeah.
And
Recognizing that
really,
the world is not that bad. I think that's crucial, because we get caught up in that, and it's like, we lose it. Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, we were talking about that earlier, how it's like the best of times and the worst of times.
Yeah.
Like, on one hand, it seems like the world's falling apart, but like literally, you look at it in pretty much every aspect, it's literally the best the world has ever been,
It
ever.
really, yeah, it really is. It's insane. And yet we make it out to be so bad for no reason?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it all comes down to perspective, choosing what you look at.
It really does. It does. And I think that's crucial, right? Too, is focusing on the right things and having a routine. And I think will really help us move forward. Yeah.
Hmm. All right, so I'd like to shift this a little bit. So
All
we're
right.
both in our late 30s. All right. I
We
have a
are.
feeling we're going to have nice, ripe, old lives. So 80 years in the future, we're in our 120s, um, lying on our deathbeds. And we have the ability to, get a message to ourselves now. And something that, another 80 years of experience and wisdom. And we're able to give that to ourselves now. What do you think would be some advice that we would give ourselves? Ooh. And maybe also another way to look at it is like your grandparents, or like people who have passed. Maybe even you didn't even meet them. Like maybe just really wise people who have passed. And
You've had the
what,
experience. Yeah.
yeah, they had the experience. What do you think they would tell you? I think the first thing that comes to me is just like have faith and believe in yourself. You've got it. You've got it in you. You've got the power to do it. Just have faith in yourself.
I think that's a crucial one, right? It's faith in yourself that you can get it done, that you can do it, because we can. I think there's nothing stopping us. I think that's a really important one to keep ourselves moving forward and to keep ourselves going in the right direction, right? That we can do it. Keep trying. I think that's the one I would tell myself too, is just keep trying. Don't stop. The only way I know I'll fail is if I stop. Keep moving forward, keep pushing, and good things will happen if you keep at it.
Hmm, that's good. Yeah, because if you keep moving, there's no way you can fail, and you're
Yeah.
you're going to get it. It's like you throw enough stuff at the wall, eventually the universe is going to give up and be like, we might as well let them have it.
On
Yeah.
the other side of that too, I think I would also add too, you know, it's important to be a good person too. Don't sacrifice your values and who you are for an end that you think that is superficial, like money or fame or any of that. Don't do that. Stick to your integrity and your values, because those will come back to haunt you later in a way I think that's very different from, a minor loss in income or something, right? Or even a significant loss in income.
Yeah, like building up a character, building virtues, things like that. Like when you were saying that, what came to mind was both Jim Carrey and also Naval Ravikant. Both of them have become extremely successful, and both of them say that when you finally get it, they even wish that everybody would get everything that they're desiring, all the fame, the fortune, all of that, so they could realize that's not where it is.
Yeah.
It's the impact you have on other people. It's having peace of mind, a healthy body, a house full of love. Those are the things that are really worth working towards.
Well, yeah, in the end, those are the only things that matter, right? Is it comes down to the value we put in it. And if we're always looking outside at the values external to us, we're never evaluating our own. And I think that's a crucial problem for a lot of people. Yeah. What else would you add to that?
Yeah, let's see. There was something. Hmm. I think we spoke about it earlier, but being patient.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, that's important.
Well, patience crucial, right? Being able to endure through the difficult times and being able to really, I think, slow down in the good times, right? And enjoy them. And I think that's all a part of patience. It's in.
That's what it was. What you just nailed it right there. Is appreciating where you are. My grandmother always used to say that to me. She, like, literally every time we met, she's like, Randy, life goes by so quickly. She's like, I still feel like I'm 18 years old. And she was like 80, 90 years old at the time. And she's like, I still feel like I'm 18 years old. It goes by so quickly. You need to enjoy it and cherish it. And I think that's such a tricky thing, because there's so much pain that we go through on a regular basis, and especially mental suffering that
Oh
we go
yeah.
through on a regular basis. And being able to enjoy it and cherish it through all of that. Like one exercise that I'm working on recently is finding the irony in the situations.
That's a
Because
good
it's
one.
it's always like it's always like the things that we want really hard, we get them, but it's just like, doop, little bit different, and it's like, oh, that can be such suffering. And you know, I really am working on trying to laugh at those types of things, because it's like, how could the universe work out this perfectly to where that happened?
Well, it's funny too, because I think it's great advice though, right? Because it's like it's also so easy to get caught up in things, to get caught up in what we're doing, that we miss everything around us and don't enjoy it at all. And you focus too much on overcoming the suffering or whatever, but you miss the enjoyment. And it's like, well, then what's the point? It's like, I think that's the other difficulty in this is like, that slowing down, taking a chance to actually enjoy what we're doing, enjoy ourselves is so important, because that's really, I think, where happiness is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And along those lines, it's like, allow yourself to be you. We spoke about this earlier, advice that we would give our younger selves. And but like allowing yourself to actually be you, and with your flaws and everything.
Yeah, I think that's no, I think that's important though. Just being yourself, I mean, that goes back to loving yourself too, right? Allowing yourself to do, to really just be you, I think is crucial.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because like oftentimes it's our flaws that kind of, people love that stuff about us.
Well, it's funny.
Yeah.
That's what we always, that's what we remember most, I think, and that's what defines us most, isn't it? Like kind of like that combination of our flaws and our good qualities together. That's who we are, right? And that's what makes it
Mm-hmm.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We smile about those things. Like, I mean, my grandfather was drunk at every single family get together ever.
Was it?
Oh my God. Like before anyone got there, he was already drunk. And I didn't realize that until I was like well above drinking age, but I was like, oh, that's why he was always so much fun. And yeah, it's just being able to, but like, I don't know how he felt about that, about himself, but I imagine he just knew that that's who he was, and he was happy with that. And that's like one of the things that I cherish, was just like how he was just so comfortable in his own skin that he just did that, and that was him.
It's like, and I think that's part of it too, right? It's just being comfortable with ourselves and realizing that, like, I think that's one of the other things I would tell myself too, older and younger, actually, from my older perspective and from, now, would be that, like, we're all just people. Remember that. Everyone has problems. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has successes and has successes and has failures and, weaknesses and strengths. And that's what makes us all great, is that we're all different, but we're all the same in the sense that we're all just trying to live life, and it's okay. I think that's a good one, because we get so caught up in this idea of perfection. I mean, Christ, like you look at, like, we got a puppy not that long ago, right? And you look at like training dogs, and everybody, you go on all these online things. It's like, spend all this time to be this perfect, so your dog does dance classes and blah blah blah. And it's like, yeah, I don't want that. Like, it's like, but it's like this idea of perfection for everything is insane. And I think it's like, that is not the life I want. I think we all have good and bad things. We all have, life is messy. It's change. It's not this perfect thing. And if we expect that, we will ruin it at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And yeah. That's such good advice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So anything else you would like to add?
No, I think that's good. I think that's good. I think that's what I tell myself. I'm set on that. Yeah.
Yeah. If I had to sum it up, I would just say, love yourself like your life depends on it. Be more grateful than you can even believe. And then just, cherish the moments.
Yeah, I think your gratitude should outweigh your desires, right? And your wants. You should be grateful for more than you want, more than you desire, and just cherish life. It's amazing that we're even here, right? This is fucking pretty incredible when you think about it. That we're on this whatever the hell ball of rock and water and stuff floating around, and we happen to be able to think. And even though it feels like a curse sometimes, it's actually a good thing, so we're aware of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
I like that.
Well, yes. So thank you everyone for joining us on this episode of the Existential Stoic Podcast with me, Randy, and my buddy Danny. And if you guys did enjoy it, make sure to like, subscribe, click the notification bell. Come find us on YouTube if you're listening to the podcast. Come listen to the podcast if you're watching on YouTube, the Existential Stoic Podcast. We will catch you next time. Midweek, we have a quick fix, a short little 10-minute episode. I believe this week we're doing gratitude.
Oh, gratitude.
It's the best
nice.
attitude.
Yeah.
All right. I'll catch you later, Danny.
Later, Randy. God damn.